Yesterday, at the end of our discourse, we're talking about the Buddha's bold, positive, solemn, clear-cut affirmation that only in his dispensation there is this practice of Eightfold Path, and only in this dispensation there is this samana who has extinguished the kilesas, the real samana. So this affirmation was given on principle so as not to affect anybody, not to harm or injure, cause injuries to anybody personally. And as for ascetic Buddha, he had come all the way with great expectations of clearing his doubt, depending upon the Buddha, putting great reliance on the Buddha. So if the Buddha has just laid down a general principle, he wouldn't be convinced, he wouldn't be encouraged, instead he might be discouraged. So in order to clear his doubt, and because he had come with great expectations and great reliance on the Buddha had to spell out his bold, positive, solemn, clear-cut affirmation. And as is said in this Pamadavihari, Samanevi and Yehi. Just like in a place, an empty place where void of human beings, there are no human beings. The place is void of human beings when there are nobody there. So also, in the teachings outside the Buddha Sasana, and those who follow such teachings, they are void of the real samana with extinguished kilesas. Here, samana is given in ordinary sense as having extinguished the fires of kilesas. That means, irrespective, there's no specification or limitation to any individual, be it monks, lay people, men or women. In this connection, there are 12 kinds of samanas as given in the text, and this will be explained. It has been more than 30 days now in this 60-day retreat, and there are only 19 more days left for your practice to complete these 60 days. And Chara has been just watching the yogis' behaviors, and he discovered that some yogis are not being able to practice the restraint of their faculties, such as eye faculty. Looking here and there, they are found to be weak in the restraint of the faculties, indriyas, such as some changing the postures, moving about, changing from one sitting to standing or standing to sitting, stretching, bending, not mindfully. Thus they lose their strength of faculties. There are 6 faculties: eye faculty, ear faculty, and so on. And one has got to practice not to allow these impurities to enter these senses. A sense of eye, sense of ear, and so on. So if one is not able to practice the restraint, if one is heedless and negligent, then one will be said to be living with negligence, living negligently, heedlessness, Pamadavihari, without heedfulness. And if, on the other hand, if one practices respectfully, carefully, attentively, and with the practice, with the restraint of faculties, then one can be said to be living with heedfulness or diligence, Appamadavihari. In this way, there are 2 kinds of practitioners, Pamadavihari and Appamadavihari. The first one is living or behaving negligently, or heedlessly, with heedlessness. And the other one is Appamadavihari, living or behaving with diligence, heedfulness. Now, if these yogis are practicing in this way, in select manner, with negligence, during the in the later remaining 19 days, then they will not be able to progress in their practice. So they'll have to try to make it up during the remaining 19 days or even after. So if one is not in the list of Pamada, one has got to practice not to be in the list of Pamadavihari. That is the first one. List of negligent yogi. And one should try or strive to be in the list of the Appamadavihari, living or behaving diligently. So, in this connection, the Acharya would like to give this interim discourse, just as a in between or before he goes on to main discourse. During the time of the Buddha, people came into the fold of Buddha Sasana, Buddha's teachings, to be ordained as monks, and most of them practice Satipatthana, way of mindfulness. And to them, the Buddha watched them, both from near and afar with his wonderful powers. And some practice negligently, others diligently. And it seems that in those days, as much as there are people who practice respectfully and diligently, there were also practitioners, monks, yogis who practice negligently in a relaxed manner with pamada. So in this way, there are two kinds of individuals: Pamadavihari, living or behaving negligently, and Appamadavihari. And the Buddha has given these two kinds. He has given the instructions, guidance to these two kinds of individuals, Pamadavihari and Appamadavihari. As for Pamada, it means failing to abstain from what should be abstained and failing in observing what should be observed. That is Pamada, negligence. If one is living in this way or behaving in this way, then one is said to be Pamadavihari. And as for Appamadavihari, living diligently, heedfully, it is a reverse of that. And not failing in abstaining what should be abstained, and not failing in observing what should be observed. Now, as for yogi, the Buddha has always instructed to be able to practice the restraint of one's faculties, beginning with the faculty of the eye, even to the practice the restraint and to be mindful, respectfully, and carefully as regards these activities, even to the extent of these minute details such as the closing and opening of the eyes, so as not to be negligent. And even one loses mindfulness in such things, at least one should be determined not to lose, and I will not lose, that sort of thing. So it is necessary to strive to become Appamadavihari. So Buddha has given these two kinds of individuals, Pamadavihari and Appamadavihari. So in short, I would like to talk about this both from the theoretical and practical aspects. Buddha said that listen to these two kinds of individuals. And in this way, Buddha himself has given these two separate things. And as for Pamadavihari, it is like this. Monks, how does Pamadavihari come into being or come to happen? It happens when one is negligent. One is practicing or behaving negligently. For instance, monks, as for the secundariya, that means the eye faculty, the faculty of the eye, or simply eye, if one is not able to practice the restraint of the faculty of the eye, instead of practicing the restraint, one is looking here and there, instead of having one's eyes cast down, then instead of practicing as instructed to behave as though one is blind, although one has the eyes to see. Once one raises one's eyelids, then these impurities are bound to enter one's stream of consciousness. One is losing one's mindfulness because one is looking here and there, seeing many kinds of visible objects. So it is lack of practice of restraint of the eye faculty, secundariya. Instead of practicing restraint, instead of blocking it, closing it, shutting it up, then it's gone. And also the kilesas will enter in the spike of the visible object seen with the eye, because one is not able to practice the restraint. So that the eye is said to become stained with the impurities. Instead of noting with power of focusing and energy to sustain one's mindfulness as regards to arisen objects or rising objects, one is looking here and there, then one is losing one's mindfulness. And instead of noting, instead of applying mindfulness as regards this visible object, if one is able to apply one's mindfulness steadfastly on the visible object, it's all right. But once one lifts up one's eyelids and looks here and there, all the mindfulness will be gone. Then one is losing them. Then one will be allowing these moha, ahidika, anotapa, uddhacca, delusion, lack of shamelessness, spiritual shamelessness, spiritual moral fearlessness, and uddhacca, restlessness will, all these, the group of these four unwholesome mental states accompany every unwholesome deed. So they are bound to attack, invade the yogi, because yogis who are not being able to apply mindfulness. So this one becomes deluded as regards the object. There will be lack of clarity, and one will feel cloudy in respect of the object noted. At this time, one will not be knowing anything. There is only this delusion which will arise in one's stream of consciousness. So, instead of detesting or fearing the loss of mindfulness, one is encouraging loss of mindfulness. Instead of noting the samatha object, vipassana object, one is losing these objects. Because one is not being ashamed of losing one's mindfulness. One is not being afraid of losing mindfulness. One is not detesting loss of mindfulness. So at that time, your noting mind will not be sustained on the main object. It will be cast away from the main object. It will be removed from the main object. Such is given as uddhacca, restlessness. And at least once you are not with the object, at least this uddhacca will happen in you. Every time you lose mindfulness, this unwholesome mental state will arise in the stream of consciousness. So, as when you look at a visible object, if that visible object is pleasurable, then there will be likes. You will come to like, become attached, crave for this object. Then greed will arise in the stream of consciousness. Then, if the object is a hate-inducing object, then there will be aversion, anger, ill will as regards the object noted or seen. All these unwholesome deeds will enter your stream of consciousness. That's why the Buddha said that if you behave in this way, if you lose mindfulness and looking here and there, then your mind will become stained with the impurities. The Buddha has said that because if one is not practicing the restraint of one's faculties, one will become stained with the corruptions. So too in the case of hearing, tasting, touching, thinking, and so on. If one is not able to practice restraint of these faculties, these things will happen. If one does not practice restraint and close or block them, if one is losing them in respect of eating, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on, such things are bound to happen. Namely, these unwholesome mental states, moha, ahirika, anotapa, uddhacca, are bound to arise in your stream of consciousness. There will be likes and dislikes about desirable and undesirable objects. Thus, we become stained with kilesas. In this way, the Buddha has taught. So, if one is not able to practice restraint of faculties, one is said to be negligent. Jaseta chitta, one's mind is said to be stained with impurities. So these impurities, defilements, undermining elements, they have the quality of burning, the burning effect. They're torturous. In a sense, they are nivaranas, hindrances to progress, such as the kamachanda nivarana, the hindrance of sense desires. Vyavada nivarana, hindrance of ill will. Tina meta nivarana, hindrance of sloth and torpor. Uddhacca gokucha nivarana, hindrances of restlessness and worry. And vicikiccha nivarana, hindrance of skeptical doubt. In this way, even if one is attacked by these undermining elements, even momentarily, then one will be losing this mindfulness. So, if one comes across desirable object, even momentarily, one will be overcome by this sense desire hindrance. One will be attacked by this hindrance. And if the visible object or the object is hate-inducing, undesirable object, then there will be vyabhada, ill will, aversion, anger. And if one is not able to exert energy, not wishing to exert energy, but even if one exerts energy, one easily gets exhausted. Such is the hindrance of tina meda, sloth and torpor. And then because the noting mind is not concurrent with the object, not being sustained on the object continuously, with the preceding mindfulness not being continuous with the succeeding mindfulness, then one's mind will be tortured by nivaranas, and one will not be able to cultivate concentration and insight. And then if one is thinking about having some skeptical doubt whether this practice is conducive to the deepening of concentration and cultivation of insight, having some skeptical doubt, not being able to come to a definite acceptance and resolution, one is said to be overcome this skeptical doubt of the hindrance of skeptical doubt, vicikiccha nivaranas. Such is jasita chitta, mind which is stained by impurities, in this case nivaranas, so that the mind becomes confused and burn up or heated up, so that pamajam nahoti, one will not be able to experience the minor form of joy or rapture, such as seeing lightning kind of rapture, and then some gooseflesh, feeling of gooseflesh, things like that, this kind of rapturous feeling. And these are minor form of rapturous feeling, and they will not arise if one's mind is confused. And if the minor form of piti doesn't arise, major form of piti also will not arise, such as feeling as though you are lifted up, your body is lifted up while you are sitting. And then when you are sitting, You don't want to change your posture of sitting. These are the major form of piti, and such things also will not arise. And if such minor or major form of piti don't arise, because one is tortured and heated up by this kilesas, impurities, then there will be no passaddhi, no tranquility, no calmness, no feeling, not experiencing the permeating kind of rapturous and calm feeling. Because one is tortured and tormented by these mental impurities, there will be no peace of mind. Both one will suffer physically and mentally. Because one is confused with these impurities, the mind is said to be polluted with kilesas. One is bound to suffer, and there will not be any concentration. One will not be able to cultivate concentration, so that one's mind will not fall calm and collected on the object of attention. If there is no concentration, there will be no cultivation of kanika samadhi, momentary concentration, and one will not be able to cultivate this kanika samadhi continuously, so as to be continuous with the succeeding and preceding kanika samadhi. Then one will not be able to cultivate this Dhamma, Samatha Dhamma and Vipassana Dhamma. These two things will not arise one stream of consciousness, because one's mind is shaken or affected by these impurities. So if one is not able to cultivate or arouse the Samatha, Vipassana Dhammas, then one will become listed, or one will come under this Pamadavihari, living or behaving negligently. So every time you lose mindfulness, you will be Pamadavihari. So long as you are not able to note continuously and practice the restraint of faculties, you will be always negligent and be called a Pamadavihari. And in which case, there will be no progress in your Samatha Dhamma and Vipassana Dhamma, even if you take time in your practice. As for the second type of individual, Appamadavihari, this is a reverse of the one we just stated. One is practicing the restraint of faculties, beginning with seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on. And as regards visible objects, as regards sound and so on, or thoughts and plans and imaginations, fantasies in the mind. All these are restrained, practicing the restraint of these faculties. Then the question is, how does this happen, Appamadavihari? That is, if one practices the restraint of eye faculty and so on, one's mind will not be stained with corruptions. And if one is practicing restraint, then if one is activating mindfulness, then one's mind will not be stained with these impurities. Every time one notes, every time one is mindful and fully aware, there will be no delusion, no lack of clarity, no confusion. Because there is this hiri-ottappa, moral shame and moral fear as regards wrongdoing. There will be no, there will be the spiritual fear, spiritual shame and fear of wrongdoing. In this case, shame and fear of losing one's mindfulness. Since one is ashamed and one is afraid of losing mindfulness, then there will be no confusion in one's mind. And one's naughty mind will not be removed or cast away from the object of attention, thus causing the kanika samadhi to arise. And there will be no avdecca, no restlessness and worry. And every time one is being mindful and fully aware, kilesas will not be able to enter one stream of consciousness. Thus, one will not be stained by these corruptions. And there will be no likes and dislikes about desirable and undesirable objects. One will be free from greed and hatred. Because noting one is activating mindfulness, one's mind will not be stained with these kilesas nor any other kilesas. And the same thing applies with in the case of hearing, tasting, touching, and so on. And by which the mind becomes clear, not confused, and alert, and active, and diligent, in which case one will be able to experience the minor form of piti, amojam hoti. One will become rapturous, joyful, in a minor way. Then, in the course of the practice, to a major experience, come to experience the major form of rapturous experience, rapture and joy. Because one is free from these torturous undermining elements, there will be no raga, dosa, no lust, craving or aversion, and so that the mind will be calm and tranquil, positive, physically and mentally. There will be peace of mind and body. And this also Sukham Hoti, because of tranquility, calmness of the mind, there will be happiness with permeating, as though happiness, well-being, sense of well-being, or the experience of well-being permeates through your body. So when you have well-being, you'll be able to cultivate concentration, deepen your concentration in stages, culminating in the samatha dhamma, realization of samatha dhamma, vipassana dhamma. Samatha dhamma, the tranquility, object of tranquility, and being able to cultivate insight knowledge, such as the causal mode of mind and body and the universal characteristics, which is the vipassana dhamma in stages. In this way, one is set to become the Appamadavihari. After listening to this brief discourse as given in Samyutta Nikaya, the book of the Kindred Saints, and we have to assess ourselves, whether we belong to Pamadavihari or Appamadavihari. Are we negligent or diligent? If you think that you belong to Pamadavihari, you should be able to immediately remove fetch behavior in order to become Appamadavihari. Do it immediately. And practice the certificate, knowing the benefit of the practice, cherishing it, appreciating the benefit of the practice, to practice the mindfulness respectfully, carefully, attentively, continuously, so as to be able to practice with focusing and the power of focusing and energy, sustaining one's mindfulness continuously, so that one will come to belong to Appamadavihari. Then one is bound to realize the samatha dhamma. If one is continuously noting, one will be free from this undermining elements, hindrances to progress. They will not have a chance to rise in the stream of consciousness, even momentarily, because you are able to deepen your concentration, and then be able to progress along the successive stages of insight towards the maturity of liberating wisdom, and experience the ultimate position beyond the arising and passing way with the path consciousness and the fruit, and path consciousness and the fruit of the path. Thus, you be able to become, you come to belong to Appamadavihari and not to Pamadavihari. And in this way, Sarah exhorts you to be able to practice to become Appamadavihari, knowing and cherishing the benefits of the way of mindfulness. That's all.